I find this both weird and fascinating. This hike starts where there was once an ancient ocean bed, some 5,000 feet deep. It goes up and over a ridge to where there was once an ancient ocean shore. And in between, we come across some ancient fossils. The operating term here is ancient. We begin the hike at the Chumash Natural Park in the Santa Susana Mountains in Simi Valley. Directions to the trailhead are in the description. Immediately, the path climbs. Always a cardiovascular shock to the system. Less than a quarter mile later, there's this unmarked junction. Continue straight. Bikers like to speed down the other path, and we don't want to get in their way. Where I'm standing was once the Pacific Ocean, some 64 million years ago, before the mountains were here. They came along when the Pacific Plate to the west of us smooshed up against the continental North American plate, and the land tilted up and became the Santa Susana Mountains. The next junction involves a quick decision. Go right, and the path is much steeper but shorter. The other way is a bit longer and less steep. It also passes this bench for a quick rest, if that's needed. Another unmarked junction, because this trail is big with a biking crowd. There are all sorts of side paths to distract us. My only navigational advice is stick to the main trail, which is usually wider and more developed. And for the first half of this hike, when in doubt, go up. We continue climbing along the ridgeline, a twisting, sometimes steep route, but filled with gobs of views over the mountains. We're not that far from Simi Valley's suburbs, but if you look in the right direction, you would never know it. Or if you look west, yeah, it's all there. Really, both views are pretty impressive. Another geology note. The prominent rocks around here are sandstone and part of the Chatsworth Formation. And whenever you see sandstone, it means the place was underwater once. That's because the rock formed when sediments, sand among them, sank to the bottom of the ocean 4,000 to 5,000 feet deep. And the pressure squeezed it all so tightly the grains cemented together. A note of caution, be sure to watch for bicycles and whatever these things are. After 2.6 miles, we arrive at the Rocky Peak Road, and a decent place to rest for a moment, and maybe check for texts.
Yeah, I know that when I meet other people, this dog doesn't.
All right, shall we go?
Yep.
Okay.
Then onward by turning left from the junction and going down. Now, after a few hundred feet on the road, we come to this dip. The southern branch of the Simi Santa Rosa Fault runs through here. Yeah, that's right. There's always the chance of an earthquake. Nothing new if you live in Southern California, but who wants to be standing right on an earthquake fault? Well, let's go.
From here, it's a steady climb for about 3/4 of a mile. Finally, the road eases. We pass this junction to the left, which we don't take. Instead, just before a tight curve in the road, we stop for a moment and look down. And there they are. Fossils. The more you look, the more you see.
The fossils here apparently date back to the late Cretaceous period, or about 80 to 70 million years ago. What I have here is a mollusk, an invertebrate species, of which there are 76,000 recognized species today. These guys are relatively rare in the sense that when the shells were deposited, they were more than likely pulverized in the turbid waters before the mountains were uplifted. Now, for the record, there is no official name for this spot. My friends who pointed this out to me call it Fossil Ridge, so let's call it that.
One note of caution as you rummage about the site for fossils, it's against state law to take them without a permit.
Plus, it's bad form to pocket these things when others should have a chance to see them as well.
Once we've had enough time to appreciate the long history of life on this planet, we continue around the corner where the road descends. And then, just when it looks like we might be going downhill for the rest of the day, the route goes back up. A little more than a half mile after the fossils, we come to this junction where the Rocky Peak Road ends and we go straight onto Las Llajas Canyon Road.
Now, those who speak Spanish probably know that Llajas is not a word, and it's probably a typo. Back when this area was part of Mexico, the canyon was possibly used as an alternative route to and from Simi Valley. Those traveling through it no doubt noticed the geology and named it Llajas, or layered rock. When the U.S. Geological Survey got a hold of the word and put it on their maps, they added an extra L. Oops.
The descent gradually eases up, and from here to the end is a pleasant walk through oak groves with their occasional shade. Artifacts from a century ago pop up here and there. On this day, there's no one else around. Okay, that might be because there's a heat wave. I'm not recommending hiking in extreme heat, but we were prepared with plenty of water. If nothing else, the canyon has a sleepy feel, as if people have forgotten it's here. And then we come to this geologic inspiration for the canyon's original name of Llajas, or layered rock.
Now be sure to look up every once in a while. See that? How the layers have uplifted on one side more than the other? that demonstrates how the mountains have formed here. Here being what is known as a transitional alluvial to marine system. That is, where we started the hike was ocean, and where we're getting close to ending the hike was the shoreline. Now, the first time I hiked through here and saw this sign, I thought maybe someone had tried to open up an amusement park and it went bust. No, seems there was a family named Marr that in the early 1900s owned all this land around here, and they thought it would be a wonderful idea to subdivide it and have houses built here. This was after they drilled some oil wells that weren't quite as lucrative as they thought they would be. In any event, they sold several hundred lots, and then the Great Depression hit, and nobody wanted to build a house in what was then a relatively remote place. Eventually, the lots were purchased by the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. There are some remaining private lots, and you might actually see a pickup drive by you from one of those rancheros.
Watch for this dark gray conglomerate rock. It was washed down off the coastal mountains and deposited on or near the beach that once existed here. As I said, it's an ancient place. Even though the temperature is reaching 90 degrees before noon, the wide road has been essentially an easy stroll. Less than a mile before the end, we trudge uphill for a few minutes on asphalt, turn left at this intersection, and briefly drop down to the Las Llajas Trailhead on Evening Sky Drive. Here we turn left and head through a pleasant neighborhood until Evening Sky Drive dead ends. We go through the gate where there's another trail that crosses this meadow. Shortly, we go right at a junction and then quickly afterward another right, which connects back to the Chumash Trail. In a few minutes, the hike is over.
That was a good hike.